Give it a second to spin up. Okay, so once again, our disclaimer one more time. Um, this session is being recorded, and if you don't, and we place our recordings on our YouTube channel, so if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. And with that, let's uh, thank you very much for joining and happy Friday. And topic topic of our discussion is the very recent public preview of a new service, or you can call it extension of an existing service. It's a DNS private resolver. Okay, so just want to spend 1 minute on. I hope everybody knows that next week is Microsoft Build conference. Due to COVID, just like past few years, it's going to be a virtual conference. The link is there. Just search in your favorite search engine, and please, there's going to be a lot of good content. I think yes, it's developer focused, but there's always content for infrastructures and data architects and data developers and all. So please, just want to share this link, or you can search it, and you can attend the session. You can build your own agenda and things like that. So just want to share that if anyone doesn't know it yet. Okay. With that, here's our agenda for our discussion today. We're going to look at the what is the DNS resolution process, how does it work, just to get an idea how this service works. Then we will go over the DNS resolver, its feature, demo, the kind of our usual way we do things. So just quickly, how the DNS resolution works. So let's say you on your computer, you type the name of a site behind the scene, it requests uh, the request is sent to a DNS resolver, okay? And that resolves the name to an IP address, sends it back to the machine, and then it's able to access that site. That's how kind of this procedure works. How it works in Azure. Azure has a global DNS address. I think everybody knows about it, 168.63.129.16. And that if you are running a service or a VM in Azure, let's say the virtual network, and you do the same thing, it will go to the Azure DNS, and it may uh, go through a chain or whatever it does. It basically will get you the address, and then you will be able to access that particular site. So, what problem area this service is addressing? Let's talk about that first. Think of these two scenarios. First scenario is, let's say that you have hybrid deployment. You have a VM that is running in Azure, and you have deployed some private endpoint, and in that particular VNet, and there is a VM that is running that need to access that, it will be easily able to access that. You have a private DNS zone set up, so it will be able to access those private endpoints. But let's say that this VNet is connected to on-prem through ExpressRoute or site-to-site VPN, and from on-prem there is a VM or a machine that needs to access those private endpoints. Basically, I should say, do the name resolution through the FQDN. How does that how it will work? What you will have to do is you will have to go to your custom DNS and set up those FQDNs. Okay. And that's how it will know, okay, for that, I have to go to this particular IP address and do all that. And let's say that you are constantly adding, removing private endpoints, that you have to make sure your DNS is custom DNS on-prem is updated. So that's why it's a becomes a challenge. Okay. Now the second scenario, let's flip it up. Let's say that you need to do the name resolution of certain FQDN, but they are in a custom DNS on-prem, and you uh, from where you want to do name resolution, you are in Azure, you're running in a VM or app service or whatever that is, and you need to do the name resolution. How do you do that? What you will have to do is you have to set up a custom DNS in Azure, throw up, throw some VMs and set up. And that's how you do the name resolution. Okay, so that's the challenge that it's trying to address is what if there is a way that we can forward these DNS requests to appropriate place and they get resolved and we get our name resolution. How about that? That's exactly this service is doing. DNS Private Resolver. So this does that at the VNet level. So think of this picture. You have here three VNets. Okay. You have a hub VNet, which is the central VNet. That's where your private resolver is deployed. Then you have your on-prem VNet, or I shouldn't say virtual network, an on-prem network that is connected to hub through express route or site-to-site VPN. And then you have your spokes, and they are basically running services and things like that. Look at how the resolution is working. Okay, and there are three key concepts to note here. One is the inbound subnet slash endpoint. That's where you will take the inbound request. So if somebody need to resolve and they need to forward you something, so let's say that from on-prem, they need to resolve some of the addresses that are private endpoints that are in Azure using the Azure private DNS zone, they will use this inbound address. Okay. The second piece is the outbound endpoint. That is when you are forwarding your request to the custom DNS. So this is when an entity in Azure, maybe an application, need to do name resolution of a service or something where that FQDN is defined in a custom DNS on-prem. That's where you will set up a rule and say, okay, from this outbound, it has to go to this, custom DNS. Okay, everybody with me so far?
And conditional forwarding is still required for on-premise?
Yes, conditional forwarding is required. So basically, you can. By the way, let me just be very clear. You can do uh, forwarding as such, but you can do conditional forwarding. So it's not required, but if you are sending request to on-prem, you have to have a forwarding rule set. In that, you can put condition, but you can say, hey, send everything to on-prem. So with that, um, and you don't have to use both. Okay, so you may have the need only from on-prem to get name resolution for the private endpoints that are in Azure. In that case, you just need inbound endpoint. That's it. You don't need outbound. You don't need forwarding rule set, all that stuff. Nothing. On the other hand, you may only need outbound endpoint and the rule set. In that case, you don't need inbound. So they are separate. You pick and choose whatever feature you want to use. Okay. And the thing is, it allows you to create multiple inbound endpoints and multiple outbound endpoints. So let's say that you have, just think of this model and you're using an hub and spoke, and there are different teams or different departments that are using this resolver. Having separate endpoints, you can build them separately. Okay, so you say department one or commerce or sorry, finance use this endpoint, and kind of for marketing use this endpoint. So they all are built so you can kind of get an idea. Okay, how many transaction each is doing, so you can get kind of a billing for each, separate billing for each. Okay, and by the way, in regards to the private DNS resolver, um, There is no VM or anything that is deployed. It's a service that is part of Azure. You deploy it, and that's it. You just use it for name resolution. And before I jump into further, I have put down all the steps here, how the name resolution will work. So as you can see here, once a query arrives in to the resolver, if it doesn't match any of the private DNS zones set up, it will see if there's a forwarding rule set up. If there is a matching in that forwarding rule, then it will be sent to the custom, through the forwarding rule, will be sent to a custom DNS to get a response back. Okay. And I'm not going to read this entire thing. This is just a summary of just to kind of, you know, uh, to, you know, get an idea how the name resolution works with private DNS resolver. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I saw someone has raised the hand, but they took it off. So I'm not sure whether they're good with that. Yeah, it seems Derek is having some
Hey, Derek,
question.
go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi Naveed. It was just the way we used to do it because you're saying this is new. We would have to have some way to have like a VM with DNS and then forward to Azure DNS. And so this is great that you have this
Yeah,
new way that
yeah,
you're explaining.
exactly. There is no VM. I mean, it's a PaaS service. Think of it this way. No VMs needed, no feeding and care. You set it up, multiple rule sets, and you're good to go. So that's the big, I mean, the big advantage here. Of course, as I said, there were other ways to do things, but this is much cleaner, simpler, less overhead. Um, uh, a way to do it. Just keep in mind it's in public preview. So so this is
And
my
Navid,
yeah.
I'm hoping that these inbound subnet and outbound subnet are dedicated for these activity
Oh
and they
yes,
cannot host
very good
anything else,
question.
right?
And we will see the demo. Yes, they are
Okay.
dedicated, and you cannot put one more than one endpoint in the same subnet. So once you create that endpoint, basically what Azure is going to do behind the scene, if the load increases, it will assign more IP addresses from that subnet. So once you create a private endpoint in a subnet, and we will see it in the demo, there is no way, I mean, that subnet is taken.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and there are guidance that you want to have like a larger subnet if you are expecting a lot of name resolutions and things like that. Okay, so yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, we will have a good time for demo. We just want to show you this is how our network will look like. I have three VNets. One VNet is a source VNet. That's where I will be doing name resolutions and things like that. I have just a Linux VM running over there. Then I have a custom DNS VNet. In that, I'm running a custom DNS, and it is resolving to a it has some kind of a uh, junk DNS record set up to a fictitious site or something, just to prove the point that I can do name resolution from there. Okay. Then you have the the resolver VNet, and that is the VNet where I am setting up my inbound subnet, which is kind of a IP address as you can see here, and the outbound subnet and forwarding rules and everything. Okay, so let's see. Let's take a quick look at the creation experience and how this thing works. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do private DNS private resolver. And folks, if you're not speaking, if you can put yourself on mute, I will really appreciate it. And we can do NCAPL. So we're just gonna pick a resource group. I'm gonna pick South Central region for this. And this is, we're just gonna name it. And we may not just create it temp. And let's So first of all, it's going to ask you what is your virtual network. You have to, and it has to be in the same region. Just keep that in mind. Okay. So I am gonna just pick this top anyone policy. Okay. It's gonna ask you, do you want to add a endpoint? Um, and as Imtiaz rightly pointed out, this is gonna take that subnet. So either you can create a new subnet and it will ask you, you can assign your own address space, you can call it uh, inbound EP or inbound subnet, and you can create it and then name it inbound EP. All good there. Let's save it. Then the next is outbound endpoint. Same thing. We can call it outbound EP. We can create a new subnet here and we can call it OB subnet. Once again, it's going to be dedicated. You cannot deploy anything there. Okay. And then comes the rule set. And just keep in mind, you can create the rule set later on. You don't have to do it right there and then. Okay. So we're going to call it temp rule set, and you will assign the outbound endpoint, and then you can define the rule. And your rule is you can call it rule one. Your domain name is mydemosite.com dot, and then you say rule state is enabled, and you can that's where you can say which DNS server is going to be addressing that request. So this is think of it, this scenario that you some application running in Azure do need to do a name resolution of a service that is running on-prem. So in your hub, you will set this rule up, and let's say that your IP address for on-prem is 10.0.0.4, and 53 is the that's the DNS port, and that's it. You will add that, and that's how this rule will work. So what it's going to do is, as soon as a query comes in for mywebsite.com, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to send it to the on-prem DNS for name resolution, and one you will get a response back from there. And just keep in mind, you do not have to have a direct connection to on-prem. Of course, you should be able to get through it. But you don't have to have a direct connection for name resolution. Okay, so that's a key point to keep in mind.
And Navi, this 10.0.0.4 is the IP address of on-premise DNS server?
Absolutely. Thank you for clarification. Yes, that's the IP address or addresses. There can be multiple IP addresses because you have multiple DNS servers running anyway. So you will put more IP addresses there. Okay. I think you can add
So
more here. Yeah,
quick question.
please.
So if I have a firewall on-prem, which IP address should I see coming in?
Which IP address you should see coming in? You will see the
Is the
the hub
outbound IP
hub
or the
hub.
inbound? Which
No,
IP?
hub IP. Basically, remember, we are
Mhm.
talking about name resolution. So this is a name resolution request. This will come from the hub, because outbound, it will come from the VNet, from the hub VNet. It's not come from outside. So I mean, normally,
Yeah, but it's really
uh,
coming from this private DNS resolver,
yes,
which
yes. So
grab
basically,
has specific
whatever
IP.
whatever VNet range that you have assigned to it, it will
Mhm.
come. Basically, it will come from that outbound subnet range.
Okay, and then should I allow the entire subnet or the specific IP?
I think you should allow the entire subnet, yes.
Entire
Because
subnet.
just keep in
Okay.
mind there may be multiple IPs created behind the scene to address the load. Okay,
Okay.
okay,
Okay.
got it. Okay. So I'm not gonna create this. I have already created a resolver. So let's take a look at that resolver that I have created. This is based on our demo. And you have the inbound endpoint. This is 10.3.2.4. And I just want to reference this diagram. So this is basically resolver subnet. Resolver is deployed. These are this is the inbound endpoint, and then have an outbound endpoint. And as you can see, there is no endpoint because they're all abstracted out inside this subnet. And as you can see, this is the subnet 10 dot, it should be here 10.2.3.2.16. Okay, with that, so these are the two things. And then let's look at our rule set. Okay, so this is my rule set that I have defined. Um, just like we were creating the rule set over there. And in that rule set, if we click on second, where is the in the rule set? Yes, so this is the DNS resolver. Give me 1 second. Let me go back to the rule set. Uh, Rules. Yes, so this is what I was looking for. As you can see, I have deployed it. I mean, I'm just created some fictitious DNS record in the DNS that I'm running at 10.2.0.4. This is to depict on-prem environment. So custom DNS, I'm running 10.2.0.4. I have created some fictitious DNS record because we are not actually going to go to the website. We're just saying, hey, you can access, I mean, you can do the name resolution. So this is the domain name, nzapldemo.com, and this is that. And as you can see here, this is how the rule set is. This is the rule name, domain name, state is enabled, and this is the DNS server. Okay, everybody with me so far? Okay, so that's one very important thing, virtual network links. Okay, so this is linked to the source VNet because remember, I'm doing both the resolutions on the inbound as well as outbound. So this is linked because I am doing inbound resolution. You know, I am doing resolution from my source subnet to here where I have deployed the private DNS zone. Okay, so just keep in mind what I have done is I have deployed a private endpoint in this subnet in here, and I don't have any private DNS zone set up for my source subnet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm not now going to try to resolve the name for that particular private DNS, and I should be able to get the private IP address. Okay, so let's go back to our Linux machine. This is the source
So you
VM.
don't have any private DNS configured in your lab
In the,
environment. What?
I have only configured it. Let me just be very clear. I have configured it here, as you can see, but not here. So I'm doing the name resolution
Oh, okay,
from here.
okay,
Okay. So let me just
okay,
be very clear here. Let me insert shape. So I am doing name resolution from here. Okay.
okay, okay,
This is from where I'm doing the name resolution. As you can see, there is no private DNS zone set up. Okay. The only
okay,
thing I have is I'm saying, please use private DNS resolver. So I'm using the inbound subnet. I have made that link. You saw that link. That's the only thing. So let's see here. What's going to happen? I'm going to look at that. I'm using dig, very common command. And I'm using, if you remember, this is the IP address of the resolver. Okay. And I'm saying this is the address that you need to resolve. And as you can see, it gave me the answer 10 dot 3 dot 0.4. So this is the private endpoint that is I have created for storage. Okay, so this is the private endpoint. It is in that network, but it is giving me the name resolution. Think of it, going to the um, going to the resolver, and it's able to resolve it. Remember, if you remember the steps, it will go to the resolver. If it has a private DNS zone set up, it will first try that. And it tried it, it resolved it, all well and good. Okay, so everybody
Thank you.
got it. Oh, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, so very simple, no frills, nothing, simple test, all good. Okay, now
Can
think
you
of it. Yeah, please go ahead.
can you show up again where you link the virtual links? There's
Yes,
a window where
this is
you have a
yes, yes, it
yeah.
is linked here. So this is basically DNS forwarding rule set is linked.
Okay.
This is that, but okay, just keep in mind this will be needed only if you are doing um, um, outbound forwarding, like using a custom DNS. This is not needed if you are just doing the private DNS zone resolution. Okay, so just want to be
Okay.
very clear here because I mean I'm using the same subnet for both, so that's it may be a little bit confusing, but just you get the idea that this is only needed. This thing is only needed when you are using outbound resolution, or basically you're resolving to a custom DNS. Okay,
Good. Okay.
so yeah, in this scenario, basically what you will have to do is you will have to use this address that we are using here, which is the inbound address of the DNS resolver. You will use as your DNS address in your VMs or whatever service that you are using. This you'll have to use it so it can resolve it to that or one of the DNS address. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the second part of it. So now let's think of it that you are in Azure and you are trying to resolve a custom DNS name, and the custom DNS is running on-prem. Okay, and let's do that. So this is the custom DNS. So I have a site www.nzapldemo.com. This is fictitious DNS entry, and I can show it to you. Give me 1 second. The how I created it. I just kind of use a very simple bind file in okay, hopefully. So this is how I created this entry. So this is totally fictitious. There's no site. It's just using the DNS resolution. So let me click on that. As you can see, it went in. It's gonna go all the way back to the DNS server, which we have configured in rule set, and it got the address 10.2.0.10. So think of it. When I call this from here, it went to the resolver. Its outbound is pointing to this custom DNS setup, got the name resolution, give it back to me. Okay.
Quick question, Naveed.
Go ahead.
Right there in your source VM
Mhm.
or in your source VNet, you don't put the custom DNS server in the source VNet. So that's resolved from the DNS being specified in the VM you mentioned.
No, we don't. Basically, over here, we are gonna be putting only the as I'm showing it here. Give me 1 second. Man.
Yeah, that source VNet doesn't have those DNS resolver IPs in the
Yeah.
source VNet custom
No,
DNS.
no. You
So they're
just
referenced
point it to
from
the
within the
inbound.
VM,
You
I
point
think.
it to the inbound. Yeah. Sorry. Good.
I was asking, so you mentioned that the DNS server up at the top line 10.3.2.4, that's
Mhm.
specified from within the VM. That's not specified in the VNet.
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
It's specified at the VM. You can specify
Okay.
at the VNet, but to think of it, man, I was trying to simulate on-prem. So on-prem, it works a different way. So,
Oh,
that's
so
why I was
there's no,
saying,
yeah,
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 you don't have a VNet on-prem.
yeah,
You have
on-prem. Yeah.
whatever
So
your
basically, I'm just
network is
trying to
there.
depict
Thank you.
to be being a slacker. I'm using the same, VNet for both showing the on-prem as well as from Azure.
I got it.
That's why
I
a
got
bit,
it. The
bit
source
of a confusion.
VNet is
Yeah,
on-prem, and so then it
yeah,
wouldn't have those
that's
DNS servers
yeah,
specified. You have to
yeah,
go
that's
out
right.
to the
Yeah,
resolver IPs. Thank you.
that's right. Yeah.
Maybe do
So
you want to
in
take a question from the chat
yeah,
quickly?
please go ahead.
So does this integrate with Azure ADDS main service?
ADDS. Um, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I to be honest, I think you can do that. I mean, it's nothing stopping you from integrating it because it's just a, I mean, DNS forwarder. So I don't see any reason why not.
That's a good logical answer.
Hope that answers your question on the chat. You could follow up if not, but
Yep. Any other questions, folks? We are a little bit over time, but
that's it on the chat, Naveed.
you folks, thank you very much for joining, and hope everybody found it useful, and hope to see everybody next week for another section of Azure Power Lunch. And have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Super awesome. Thank you, Naveed.
Thank you.